Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, your guest host for Point of View.
Well, good afternoon. I'm so happy you tuned in to Point of View. I'm Debbie Georgatos. I'm very happily substituting for Kirby Anderson on Point of View. I'm always honored and excited when I get this opportunity to come and talk with you on the Point of View show. Well, today we do have two guests coming up throughout our show, and they both relate to what's happening in Washington, specifically with respect to what's happening inside the FBI and the Department of Justice and the allegations of a widespread scandal. And I don't raise this subject in any way to be particularly, I don't want, this is not scandal mongering at all, but it is really important to understand for patriots in this country to understand that what seems to be the depth of corruption that has occurred in Washington, and to understand the specifics about it, so you can both follow the news and perhaps tell your friends about it, because it's a very big story. So we have one in the first hour guest, a former FBI agent, John Guandolo, coming up at 1:30. He is an individual, and when he was with the FBI, part of his responsibilities was to frequently be the one creating the application for a FISA warrant, the Foreign Intelligence Service Act warrant, this very special court and process set up that permits spying, that authorizes spying on foreign agents. And that's what was in the center of this whole Trump, Russia, FISA, Fusion GPS story. And I want him to just tell you how profound, how serious the FISA application process is, what it requires, and what seems to have occurred in this particular case. So John Guandolo coming up at 1:30, and then at 2:15 we have a woman named Sydney. Her last name is Powell, Sydney Powell. She has 10 years of experience as a federal prosecutor. She was the youngest person ever named as a U.S. prosecutor on the federal bench and in the federal U.S. Attorney's Office, and then she spent 20 years after that time in federal appellate litigation. She's regularly named top lawyers in the country. She's known as just a super expert, and she's going to describe more about the irregularities that seem to be coming to light with respect to the investigation by Special Counsel Mueller of the claim that there was some wrongdoing during the campaign in 2016 between President Trump and Russia, which has proven out that so far there has been absolutely no evidence of such collusion uncovered, but the investigation nonetheless goes on. So we're going to talk with her about what the evidence coming to light. Also, as a breaking news point on that story, we'll come back to later, but you may have seen in that story that both the two individuals, the two FBI agents who were inside the FBI and involved both in questioning Hillary Clinton and involved in the Mueller investigation of President Trump and the Russia story, those two individuals who became involved in an extramarital affair and also were texting each other back and forth. Their text messages have proved to be a great source of information about the apparent almost astonishing level of bias within the FBI to both promote Hillary Clinton as the presidential candidate and to defeat Donald Trump. And there was a claim a few days ago that 5 months, in a crucial 5-month period, of the text messages between these two star-crossed lovers had disappeared, has somehow been lost. But the breaking news is that the Department of Justice has indeed uncovered those text messages and are bringing them out. So that's a big story, and it relates really to the integrity of the federal government. It relates to our trust in the system we've created, the rule of law we've created in America. So those will be two interesting guests. And I know that if you're a regular listener, you already know the number, but to the caller number today and every day is 800-351-1212. So feel free to call in during the show. So that's what's coming up. What I wanted to hit in the first hour was just this, I don't know, I just felt really good about America when I was reading what the remarks that were made by our current Vice President, Mike Pence, who visited Israel in the last week, and actually 2 days ago, I think this was occurring. So Vice President Mike Pence is in Israel, and he's the first representative of the U.S. government to go to Israel since the time that President Trump agreed to move America's recognition of the capital of Israel, of the country Israel, to Jerusalem, the capital that the Israelis, the state, the country has chosen. And President Trump agreed that America would honor Jerusalem as a capital of Israel. But what I really liked and wanted to share with you is some of the comments. And this is an article that's up on the website at pointofview.net. It's called Pence Visits Israel's Capital. What was so striking and so profound about his visit was in the speech that Vice President Pence made in Israel to their equivalent of what we have Congress. They have a Knesset, and he spoke at the Knesset I guess it was Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. Anyway, and his comments were so moving that I just want to share a few of them with you because I think he represented America and really the Christian and Jewish communities in America so well. And among the many things that Vice President Pence did in his speech at the Knesset, first of all, the gentleman reporting this story that is up on the pointofview.net website, he said, as this gentleman who was there at the Knesset when Vice President Pence spoke, he says he walked out of the Knesset, someone, an Israeli cameraman, turned to him with a happy look, he says a jovial expression, and speaking in Hebrew said, "Was that the Messiah or the Vice President of the United States?" It was just a great line, just saying, wow, there's someone who recognizes and has praise for Israel. And among the many things that Vice President Pence said, Vice President Pence is, I think you all likely know, is a devout evangelical Christian. And he spoke there in the Knesset saying that in the birth of the modern state of Israel, we see nothing less than a fulfillment of the biblical promises of God. And the speech he gave there was spoken of as a milestone in American-Israeli relations. Among the very many biblical passages, and from the Old Testament, obviously, but that Vice President Pence spoke of there, he talked about, drawing on the book of Deuteronomy, Vice President Pence described how through conquests and expulsions, inquisitions and pogroms, and a Holocaust, and he went on to say the Jewish people nevertheless held fast to a promise through all the ages written so long ago, that even if you have been banished to the most distant land under the heavens, from there he would gather and bring you back to the land which your fathers possessed. He also, in this speech at the Knesset, quoted the book of Isaiah. He suggested that in Israel's founding in 1948, this is the quote now from Vice President Pence, the Jewish people answered that ancient question, can a country be born in a day? Can a nation be born in a moment? He spoke about he went through a history of Abraham and Isaac and King David and Kingdom of Israel. And he basically said the emergence of the modern Jewish state. This is Mike Pence again saying, we see the hand of God. The miracle of Israel is an inspiration to the world. So I just thought that was a stellar representation of the embrace of the country of Israel that should be coming from the United States of America, from our Christian nation, speaking on behalf of Jewish Christians, of all Christians, but I mean Jewish Americans and Christian Americans. Vice President Pence really brought a heartfelt message of genuine, warm support for the people of Israel. And I think I know it was extremely well received. And for those of you who love Israel too, you might want to go read that. We're going to zip off to a break and come back and I'll tell you about something else in foreign policy, which is President Trump at the Davos talks. Come right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, the discussion earlier this month about the possible political future of Oprah Winfrey provides a commentary on America's religious landscape. Russ Duthot reminds us that we've heard about Oprah the entrepreneur, Oprah the celebrity, Oprah the champion of holistic medicine, etc., but the press usually ignores her place as a religious teacher to millions of Americans. He also says we need to understand that there are three broad approaches to religious questions, one traditional, one spiritual, and one secular. The traditional approach may take various forms. There are Protestants, Catholics, Muslims, and Orthodox Jews. They believe in specific revelation, have a holy book, and follow various creeds. The secular tradition is also easy to document. It is rooted in the Enlightenment, in rationalism, and the scientific method. In previous commentaries, I've written about the new atheists as well as the rise of the nones, Americans who have no religious preference. In between these two traditions is the spiritual. No doubt you've heard friends or colleagues say, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. This view encourages syncretism, merging various religious ideas, or relativism with no belief in absolutes. So when Oprah Winfrey tells us to pursue your truth rather than the truth, she is talking to this broad tradition. It's also worth noting that Americans in this spiritual tradition aren't very political, but they might be more involved if someone like Oprah Winfrey runs for office. And it is likely that some of the other traditions might be willing to cast a vote for her. Traditionalists might be attracted to someone who still uses religious language. Secularists might be attracted to someone who isn't quite so dogmatic about religion and morality. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For more information about issues covered on Viewpoints, visit pointofview.net. Pointofview.net.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. And I'm just, as I said in the first little segment, I'm always honored and happy to be invited to substitute for Kirby Anderson on Point of View. My name is Debbie Georgatos, and the caller line is 800-351-1212. I mentioned the first segment that this week Vice President Pence had visited Israel, and I thought just did a beautiful job representing America to the country of Israel, brought a Christian Judaic message of support, of bonding, of love for the country of Israel and the fulfillment of biblical prophecy and language about Israel as a home. And so it was just a great thing and a great contrast to the way other diplomats in the past, other representatives of the president or vice president have spoken. It was just is a very openly religious and certainly coming from Vice President Pence, a very genuine speech there. And I think he did wonders for America-Israeli relations. So the other thing that's happening internationally, and I'd love to have your thoughts on this, but so today, our current president is over in Switzerland, and Donald Trump is attending in Switzerland the Davos conference. And this is interesting because it's an annual conference, maybe it's even twice a year, whatever it is. It's all the leaders, all these leaders in the world, and they get together to talk about the future of the world and how to cooperate, work together better, blah, blah. So one thing, several kind of background thoughts about this. President Trump ran during his campaign with a common theme of America first, and he's retained that as a theme of his presidency. So he's bringing that message to Davos, Switzerland. And so then he, of course, there with many other world leaders, some of whom don't care for that message. And what I really wanted to talk about on that subject was that I don't know of any, perhaps, I think that the historical fact of the way America has operated, especially the last 8 years, makes the term America First seem kind of on edge to people. It seems confrontational. It seems perhaps an insult to other countries. But really, when you think about it, every country represents its own people's interests. I mean, people don't go to Davos and say, gee, sure we'd love to make our country bad so that your country can be better. The notion of America First is just kind of reasserting the natural sovereign, and I believe what Donald Trump means by it, reasserting the natural sovereignty of our country. And there may be people who disagree with that tone. In fact, right after he arrived, there were comments from other, the media is always there collecting comments from other people. So we had Macron, I think he's prime minister in France, but he said, if we aren't able to agree to a standard of international cooperation, we'll never convince the middle class and the working class that globalization is good for them. And again, with the words, it depends what you mean by those words. If you mean global trade, global understanding, communication, yes. If you mean surrender of the goodness and strength of your markets at home, then he's right. A lot of middle class, working class people might say no thanks. And there was also a comment by Angela Merkel of Germany. She said, we are seeing nationalism, populism, and in a lot of countries, a polarized atmosphere. We believe that isolation won't help us. We believe we need to cooperate, that protectionism is not the answer. So these are strains in the international community. I see we have a caller. I'm going to go to that caller in just a second. But just to say that it depends, again, on what you mean by the terms you use. Because if you mean you're a proud American and you love America and you want America to be strong, that's a great message. And I think that message resonates with the American voters. If you mean something else, as in you're somehow agreeing to denigrate other people or think of them as lesser, of less importance than you are, then you're probably not going to have the idea sell too well. So it looks like we have a caller on this subject. Well, the Israel experience. Yeah, so let me go ahead and I'm going to click on this one. Okay, I'm not that hot in these clicking things. I'm going to try clicking. I believe we have Stephen from Georgia online. Hi, Stephen.
Hi. Enjoy your program.
Thank you. I love substituting for Kirby Anderson.
My question is disregarded Zionism. I am a Zionist. I'm a Christian, but I believe in Zionism. I believe in Theodor Herzl and his view regarding Israel. The diaspora is certainly a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, Deuteronomy 28:64 and other passages. There's one aspect I'd like to get your view or your comment. The Temple Mount. Temple must be built. Temple has to be built. God prophesied it. It's a part of his plan. That temple was destroyed by the Romans, and Israel has every right to a Temple Mount. What are your comments?
Stephen, have you visited Israel?
Excuse me?
Have you visited Israel?
No, I have not visited Israel, but I do know Hebrew, and I have taken the language. Obviously, I know the Bible. The Revelation 11:1 and 2.
Right. Oh, I just
indicate the temple.
Excuse me. I was just curious because in our life we've been very blessed by the fact that my husband's business partner is an Israeli citizen. We have a fabulous relationship. He's a Jewish Israeli citizen. We are Christian. We have a great relationship. We've been to Israel. My husband's been there many, many times. I've been there twice. And so I love your question. And I love, actually, I guess in part it's asking, does what Vice President Pence was saying, does it signal the America's support for for fulfillment of the prophecy? And, I'm not a theologian. I find you use the word Zionist. I have often said I'm a Christian Zionist. I believe that the Zionism that was the right fulfillment of anyway, I love the Zionist movement in Israel and support them. But on the particular question of what will bring about, I'm not a theologian, so I don't want to pretend that I am. I'm a lawyer by background, but I support Israel. I support the fulfillment of prophecy, and I do agree. And I asked a little bit about the visiting of Israel because it's a really interesting thing, humanly, what's happened in that area of Jerusalem. The Jewish people are astonishingly gracious to members of all faiths. They are astonishingly generous when they start, if they're digging for a parking lot and they come across something of archaeological importance, they stop the dig, they bring an archaeologist, they are just enormously gracious and generous toward those who respect and love the Christian faith and history of Christianity in their land, and they are generous and good toward, they try to be generous and good toward the Islamic faith. Right now, it's obviously just a disaster in the center of Jerusalem and where the Temple Mount should be. And I don't know, I certainly don't want to predict that there's going to be any immediate effort on America's part to bring that. And I'm not a theologian to maybe answer your question as well as you'd like, but I think that the signal and support of that America not only supports Israel as a modern country, but as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy is a beautiful and important thing. And I'm glad that we had Mike Pence saying all that. And thank you, Stephen, very much for the call.
Next year in Jerusalem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, folks, that is interesting because it's a fabulous point about, how much can the support of America go toward Israel? Because we, I'm going to guess several of our listeners probably have visited Israel or would like to go there someday. I know Kirby Anderson has been there several times. And, it's and the Christian support of the country of Israel and the right to fully live out the prophecy in the Bible is something near and dear to many Christians' hearts. So I don't know. We'll see how that all goes. I want to switch topics before I run out of time in this segment. First of all, I'm back to Davos for a second. I thought it was great that I support the message of President Trump. It's kind of reasserting America's back to a sense of sovereignty and self-respect, which I think is really what Trump is meaning by his America First. We're not here to make sure that everyone else their needs are met before ours. And I think that his campaign and I think his messaging about that Americans have the right to security at their borders and trade deals that honor the American worker and keep the American economy strong. All the bad labels that people try to put in those messages, I don't think those are justified. And so it'll be interesting to see how the Davos conference plays out, because there are many people there who, when they say that they are against populism and they really are for globalization, they really just mean they want to bring America down to be equivalent with other countries, which is not the same thing as President Trump means when he says America first. So that's going to be an interesting and ongoing thing to watch. I've been amazed by President Trump's clarity on this issue and just kind of unwillingness to give into the pressure when people say that you can't say this and you can't say, oh, no, I'm going to say it anyway. Well, we're going to go to break very quickly of 1 minute here, but I want to give you a little bit of a tease of the call we're going to have coming up right after the break at 1:30. If you're in Central Time, 1:30. And that is with John Guandolo. All of you have been listening surely to the news, even prior to the election in 2016, that there was an argument that President Trump had engaged in some collusion with Russia designed to interfere with our election and bring about, and his victory. And while the investigation is going on and on and on and on and on, that has no evidence has come up of that. But in the meantime, within the FBI, there was an application for a warrant to spy on alleged Russian activity that related to Donald Trump, and that warrant came from a FISA court, FISA, and that's what I'm talking about with our next guest, John Guandolo. What does that mean? How hard is it to get a FISA warrant? It's really important to understand in this whole story. Come right back.
Point of View is committed to spreading the truth, oftentimes a truth that those in political power don't like getting heard. But the only way it can be heard is if our team stands strong together, if you do what you can to support the Point of View Truth Team. It's having an impact, as we heard recently from U.S. Representative Louis Gohmert.
Everywhere I go, I hear people that you have influenced, that Point of View has affected. You have made such a difference, and you rely on people to contribute, and if they don't contribute, then that truth does not get heard.
Help Point of View make a difference. Pray and consider what level is right for you. $30, $65, $100 a month, or even more. Please do what you can. 1-800-347-5151, or visit online, pointofview.net. Look near the top right for the link that says Become a Monthly Partner. Join the Truth Team 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, your guest host for Point of View.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Debbie Georgatos, and I love filling in for Kirby Anderson on Point of View whenever I have the opportunity. I mentioned before the break we have a guest joining us, and I didn't get to tell you quite enough about him, so I'm going to quickly tell you that we have joining us by phone John Guandolo, and he happens to be, I will say, he is a family friend, lives in Dallas, but he's not in Dallas right now. But he is a 1989 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He served as an infantry platoon commander in combat operations, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. He served 1991, 96. He served in the military a lot. He'd been a combatant commander. He's a combat diver, a military free fall parachutist, graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School. So he's a serious patriot, first having served the country, and then he joined the FBI. And he joined the FBI in Washington, in the Washington Field Office, 1996 to 2000. And then 2001, he served 1 year as the FBI liaison to the U.S. Capitol Police, investigating threats to the president and vice president. But the reason I have him on today is, and first of all, I think we have you online. Hi, John. Do we have you?
Hi, how are you doing, Debbie?
Great. I'm so glad you're with us today. Okay, so I'm going to quickly remind our listeners that the reason this is such an important and potent political issue, or just kind of issue in the country right now, is this. Right now, the entire there's a cloud of suspicion surrounding the FBI and the Department of Justice, because there were warrants issued by the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, that permitted, eavesdropping, or as President Trump called it inaccurately, wiretapping, but permitted a lot of eavesdropping based on, it was supposed to be eavesdropping on foreign people who were interacting with Americans. But the net of getting this warrant issued by the FISA court was that the Department of Justice, the FBI, was able to spy on the Trump campaign throughout the later portion of 2016 and on, and this kind of key issue was whether or not there was even a sufficient justification for the FISA court to even issue a warrant permitting this surveillance. And the process in order to get that warrant issued is that somebody at the FBI, somebodies, plural, has to fill out paperwork and say they have sufficient reason for a request that the FISA court issue a warrant permitting spying, which is how we got to all of this mess over President Trump and all of the eavesdropping that they did, leading us to where we are in the Mueller investigation. But back to that initial process, you have to file something with the FISA court, given reasons why you are entitled to have a warrant for that surveillance. And this is the FISA application. And this is what precisely I want to have us talk with John Guandolo today about, because he did, in the course of his time with the FBI, actually was the person who filled out those kind of applications to get FISA warrants. And I want all of us to get clear from him, because there have been allegations this was kind of a slapdash process. And the political underlying story, which is so important, was during the campaign, the Hillary Clinton campaign paid for kind of opposition research, very shady people involved, came up with this famous Trump dossier, which was largely appears dishonest, fantasy writing, but it was the Trump dossier paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign in order to, as opposition research against Donald Trump. And that the argument is that dossier was used in part or in full to get the FISA warrant issued. So with that background, John Guandolo, what does it take to get a FISA judge to issue a warrant?
All right, I'm really appreciative that you're asking the question, and I think it's absolutely critical for Americans not to only understand the process, but the constitutionality of the process, and then how, in this case, this was even allowed. And I think if I can answer those two things for your listeners, I think then that'll be extremely beneficial for them as they think and discuss these issues, think about and discuss these issues. First of all, the FISA court itself, you just said it. This is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It's an act of Congress, so it's lawful. When it was made into law, it certainly is constitutional. The judges involved are judges who are federal judges who have already been confirmed. So they're already federal judges. They can be on the federal bench and the appellate bench. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court chooses those who will sit on the FISA court. Oh. And then, of course, they're given the requisite background checks. And so using the constitutional system of the court, but putting a layer over it of confidentiality and that allows for people, in this case we're talking about FBI, the FBI agents or supervisors, which when I was at FBI headquarters, I was a supervisor and did this process, and I'll give more detail of that. But the process itself is meant to protect sources and ways in which certain information is collected in intelligence and terrorism investigations. It is absolutely necessary for the business of the government and for the national security. And just like everything else in our system, just like a regular trial, whether it's somebody for bank fraud or theft or murder, our system depends on truthful testimony in the court during a trial, truthful sworn testimony of law enforcement and others when they swear out affidavits for search and arrest warrants. So the process, that's the framework for the process. And it's a very small number of FISA judges. And those judges are responsible to the Supreme Court for that oversight. The process is something like this. And I'm going to talk to it since you are framing it in this instance. I'm going to talk about it from the FBI's perspective. An FBI agent in the field anywhere in the country has a case, and they require a warrant that cannot be made public. So they need to do something that's classified. So they write up the statement of facts for the affidavit, and they submit it to FBI headquarters to a guy like me in this case. I read it, and then there's a ongoing, lengthy, meaning usually several weeks, discussion going back and forth because I'm going to be the one that's going to swear out the affidavit that was given to me by somebody in the field. So my rear end is on the line. So I need to make sure everything that I'm going to swear to is true, so that agent provides me all the background details, the investigative information, and I have to sit there and plow through it and go through the affidavit. And they're not short. In many cases, they're over 100 pages, but certainly having a 70-page FISA warrant is not unusual. So then you're going through it line by line, and then once I'm satisfied with it as a supervisor at headquarters, I take it to, and I'm already working with, but I'm taking that final piece or the final draft to the Department of Justice attorney that I'm working with, and then that person and I go through it. And then they're going to ask, because they need to be comfortable, because they're going to be the ones taking it to the FISA judge, and they don't want to look like it. They don't know what they're doing. And then you go and meet with senior FBI officials, normally the director. There's a cover sheet, and the DOJ signs off on it, and the FBI director or the deputy director will sign off on it. So literally, I've on occasion, like these things normally can be, you need them as soon as possible. And for some of them, if there's some immediate danger, an agent might spend 36 hours putting this thing together straight, firing it to headquarters to a guy like me, and then I don't do anything until I've got everything I need with the DOJ attorney. You might go on a Saturday or Sunday to the FBI director's home where he will sit there and read it and ask questions and make sure everything's right. Then you leave there and you drive to either, the chambers of the FISA judge, and then that judge will sit there and review this and either say yes or hand it back to you and go, I need to know this, 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 and this. And then you got to go back and you got to call the agent. Then you got to go back and let the FBI director know, okay, we had to change this, got it. And then you go back to the judge. That's what the process looks like practically. And once the warrant is signed off, then the technical work begins to actually turn that on to begin surveilling the person. That's a snapshot of the process.
Okay, that is such perfect timing because we do have to go after our break. I'm so glad you can hang on during the break. But that is a great description, folks. What you were just hearing is what is the normal process in the responsible FBI seeking to get a warrant issued by a FISA-appointed judge. And we're going to contrast that when we come back with the kind of evidence needed, what you just heard described versus what appears to have occurred with respect to the FBI potentially using the the Trump dossier paid for as opposition research as the basis for a FISA warrant. So I'm talking with John Guandolo. I'm Debbie Georgatos on Point of View Radio. Come right back.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. The Smithsonian Institution has appointed its first curator of religion in over 100 years. Peter Manseau, the new curator, explains that you can't tell the story of America without the role of religion in it. According to Manseau, among the first exhibits to be displayed will be a church bell crafted by Paul Revere, Thomas Jefferson's Bible that cut out the portions he did not believe, a manuscript from the Book of Mormon, a Muslim text that once belonged to an African slave, and even a Torah scroll damaged by Hessians during the War for Independence. Manseau also intends to display a compass used by Roger Williams to find his way to Rhode Island when he was exiled from Massachusetts for his religious beliefs, a display that Manseau hopes will help Americans ponder what religious liberty looked like in the context of the founding of our country. The new curator is right. You cannot tell the story of America without telling the role religion has played in making our country what it is today. And that includes the role of religious liberty. These artifacts from our history point to the real stories of Americans committed to the historically radical idea that government respect a person's right to honor his conscience before God. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
More people today are saying Americans don't really need religion, but America does need religion. Religion helps the economy, families, and even national security. Learn more by reading Saving America, 10 Reasons Religious Freedom is the Key to Our Nation's Future. You can download this free booklet at firstliberty.org/Saving America. That's firstliberty.org/Saving America. Discover 10 ways religion benefits America at firstliberty.org/Saving America.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Debbie Georgatos, filling in for Kirby Anderson. We have on the phone, still with us, I'm so glad to have him on the phone, John Guandolo. He is a former FBI agent who participated in the creation of affidavits that were used by the FBI to request warrants be issued by the FISA courts. This is exactly what is at the root of the issue we're now discussing as a nation, which is what was it the FBI used or had, what information did it have available to use to make the request to the FISA court, which resulted in the surveillance of President Trump and several of his people in his team due to the allegation about a Russia-Trump collusion, which appears to have no merit to it. But I want to go back and ask you something else. You mentioned, John, you were talking about how the agents transmit information to you, and you're at the Washington office and you're working on this application, and it goes to the process you described. What if someone in the field said, you know, I don't directly know this, but I have information from a third party? I mean, to what extent is third party information relied on by the FBI without independent investigation of it to make a FISA application?
Well, like with all kinds of work that the FBI does, for instance, let's say it's source information, and you have a source who says there are drugs inside the house right now, or a drug deal is going down on this date, you may take action on that, but you're going to do it with the understanding that this guy could be lying to benefit himself, or he might be doing it for something. So you look at, okay, how long has this source been somebody that you've worked with? How accurate is their information? And we actually track that kind of stuff when it comes to terrorism or counterintelligence matters. It becomes more critical. So you do use a variety of sources in there. Research that you've done, addresses, your own investigation, which can be a whole bunch of stuff. And yes, source information. You've reviewed other FBI cases to provide links, all that stuff. But at some point, you say that, source one stated X, and source one has been a reliable source, and blah, blah. That's all goes into that process. Source two says this, which corroborates what source one said. And independently, I did this research, which shows that what they're both saying is true about this part. So that all goes in to determine. And remember, the legal standard is probable cause. Is there probable cause to believe that a crime is being committed? And if that's true, you're not trying to prove the person guilty. Is there probable cause to believe they're violating the law? And if the answer is yes, then you can go forward. Then the warrant will be signed. And that's the same. Probable cause is the basis for search warrants, for arrest warrants, and for these kind of invasive warrants where you're going to listen to somebody's communications or capture their communications. So it's the legal standard. So number one, what I hope people got was the whole process I described earlier is lawful, it's constitutional, and it has the appropriate checks and balances. And by the way, nobody involved in the entire dossier issue regarding President Trump has ever even suggested that the judge involved was in any way acted inappropriately. And so beginning there, the process works. Nobody's even accusing the judge of rubber stamping this. So then you have to look at when the agents and the DOJ attorneys go to get this signed off, how did they represent this dossier? And the obvious answer is if a judge signed off on it, they represented it as everything in it was true and that it had been checked and they'd investigated, when in fact, according to people who have seen the dossier, and I have not, that it's, and based on what's been released about its contents, if we're to believe that, it's mostly not true. And it's actually based on things that were created. And so right there you have a felony. You have a crime committed. And if people gave the information to the FBI and they purported that this is true for reasons of conspiring to either tamper with U.S. elections or anything else related to that, those are also crimes. So the issue here is not the system of the FISA court or the warrant system. It's that people lied and swore before a judge that what they were saying was true when in fact it was not. And that's a crime.
So it's a crime, both, you're saying, for the people who may have represented to the FBI that this was not for a motive to interfere in an election. This was just concern about illegality or concern about danger to America. So it's a crime to misrepresent your reason for giving them that information. Is that I understand that correctly?
Well, it's a crime to lie to a federal agent. So lying to the FBI in general is a 1001 charge under federal code, and that's. But I don't think that's the worst one. And I would like to make this clear, and just very briefly, this is much bigger than just this. Somebody lied on a warrant. By doing that, laws have been broken. But when we can demonstrate, and I believe legally, if the facts are what they appear to be, that we know as of now, This is actually a conspiracy not only to tamper with an election, and since the election, to remove from office a duly elected president. This is, and when we can track the conspiracy to a larger movement, which this is a lot of what I brief and teach and consult leadership on, because I believe it is. This is a larger conspiracy to not only overthrow the U.S. government, to go after our system and undermine our constitutional republic. These are acts of sedition. And if you're in a position of authority in the government and your behavior is seditious, treason is also on the table. And if we can indict people and convict them of treason, then I believe they should face the maximum punishment, which is execution. And that's where I believe we are in this. This is not merely, somebody lied to spy on Mr. Trump. This is part of a much broader effort. And I believe with all of this, and for your listeners, we've got to see this in those terms. And if I could just one more point to maybe highlight what I'm trying to get across. This whole nonsense about, quote, fake news. And when I say nonsense, I don't understand that the media is intentionally lying. They're intentionally lying. But when we can demonstrate that organizations, media organizations, and some of their key people, reporters, anchors, are lying in order to further an agenda, that's no longer just fake news, that's hostile propaganda in furtherance of this same movement. And it needs to be treated that way. I think that this fake news being a cute tagline on Twitter needs to go away.
Because it trivializes it. I got to jump in because John, I know I only asked you for half an hour. Can you hang on during one more break and come back after one more break or not? Your schedule allow that?
Sure.
Okay, because we've got to go to a commercial here. But we also have Sonia holding from Florida. Sonia, if you can hold on during the break, because I see you have a question for John, I will take it after the break. I'd love to have you ask your question. And I think he may have been getting at the point, if I'm reading the summary of what you were calling about, he may have been getting to that point that this is not just the FISA process was my beginning, but the larger point was John jumped to without my even getting to the question is exactly what we have to be concerned about. What is the bigger picture we're looking at? So don't go away. We'll talk to Sonia from Florida and John Guandolo again right as soon as we come back.
If you've listened for any length of time, you've probably heard about Point of View listeners who've done amazing things, started ministries, found their life's calling, impacted their city, their state, the nation. But let me be clear, you don't have to have a huge impact to be faithful. I thought about that when I read a note from Joanne in Texas. She admitted, up until recently, I've not had much of a political view, nor have I ever been so informed. But since I signed up for your email and website information, I can now get the correct information that the public is oblivious to. Joanne ended by thanking us for the Take Action section of our website, where we make it easy for you to express your views on key issues with your elected representatives. Everything we do on the air, online, through mail and email is made possible through people like you who invest in Point of View so we can invest in issues that matter. Take your place on the Truth Team. Call 1-800-347-5151 or sign up online at pointofview.net/team. 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net/team.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week. in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, your guest host for Point of View.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Debbie Georgatos, happily filling in for Kirby Anderson on Point of View. And we have on the line still, I'm very grateful, John Guandolo was able to hold on. He is a former FBI agent, a serious assessor of where we are in this situation right now in the country with Department of Justice, FBI, the Mueller investigation, Fusion GPS, and we've been talking. First, we were talking about how serious the application process is to get a FISA warrant issued, and then we went on after that to talk about the larger legal context of this, what this may mean for America. But I wanted to give a chance. We have Sonia on the line, who from Florida, who's been holding to make a comment, and I think ask John a question. So, I believe we have Sonia. Hello.
Hi, Debbie. Thank you for this honor and giving all the glory to the Holy Spirit. Just want to first say, John, Leviticus, the whole holy book, but Leviticus 25:17 would be a great place to start. And also, J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, book, Master of Deceit, The Story of Communism in America and How to Fight It. It's by Abeka Books, the Ministry of Pensacola Christian College. It's used by the homeschoolers. It needs to be used in the public school system because the book itself talks about everything that we're looking at right now. Communism is the mortal enemy of anybody that believes in a supreme being as a creator. Christianity, Judaism, and even Islam, all of them believe in a creator. So communism, Russia, is in the White House right now. And J. Edgar Hoover wrote this paper and this book in 1919. We're going to be celebrating 100 years of him writing this legal brief next year. And what are we dealing with Mueller and everybody else? The word. It is written. We are here. Please read this book, John. It proves everything. And it's even further proof that we need to put the word of God back in the school systems of the public children of America. And we'd have compassion for our fellow children. So,
Sonia, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so very much for that call. And I do want to turn back. We have John Guandolo on the line. And part of the response, I love what Sonia is making the point, John, about what America is. And this isn't... I happen to know John as a family friend, to know that he's a very Christian, and so am I. And I think we bring our Christian values to our work and to our assessment of the country and the situation we're in. And John, you can feel free to respond to anything Sonia said, but I also want to ask you, back to the point you're making before the break, this is a bigger question than someone mistakenly or even intentionally misused the FISA warrant process. The purpose of their mission in misrepresenting what they had, and getting a FISA warrant and starting the investigation and the surveillance of the allegedly the Russians, really of the Trump campaign, it ultimately may rise to the level of treason. And I wish you'd actually lay out that again, what you were saying before the break about how serious we need to look at this.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Sonia, for your comments. I want to just assure you, a huge part of what understanding the threat my organization does is we demonstrate how the Marxist movement operates. And so we are very well attuned, and we've done our history on the communist movement here in the United States from way back. And really, the progressive movement that laid the foundation for it, going back really to the turn of the 20th century. What I'm saying is that there's two big pieces to answer what you're asking, Debbie, and that is first, this entire war. I want to go a little deeper since you're asking me to kind of do this. I use the term, and Understanding the Threat uses the terms and phrases Islamic movement to describe that effort and the Marxist movement. But using true doctrinal language, what it is an Islamic counter-state. And by the way, their own documents, the Muslim Brotherhood documents and other documents that we have from other jihadi organizations, they are establishing a system here beneath the radar, and now, of course, a lot of it is overt, to counter the constitutional republic with the intent of overthrowing the republic at some point. The Marxist counter-state is doing the same thing in different ways, and they're both hostile. And we have identifiable movements here in the United States doing that, and at the national, at the federal level, our intelligence agencies, our Department of Justice, the key organizations of government are not addressing either one of those movements or counter-states at all, zero. And
isn't that in part because at least some people would agree that they don't see it, they don't want to believe it, or they just think it couldn't be as bad as you're saying. We may have a few bad actors, but it's not really an organized. I am agreeing with you, as you well know, but isn't the reason they don't because they dismiss it as a serious concern, right?
Well, right. There are a lot of various reasons why people are not addressing it. Some because they're unprofessional, some because they're nefarious, but most, as you point out, is because they're ignorant. And that is exactly the enemy's main line of effort. It's a war of narratives. It's an information war. And the information and the narrative that they have been able to get the high ground on, if you will, is that Islam has nothing to do with the violence that we're seeing, that Antifa is actually a good organization because it's fighting, they're anti-fascists, and that Black Lives Matter is a civil rights movement and related matters. Well, none of those things I just said are true about what they say about themselves. In fact, as you know, that the Islamic movement and its goals are easily identifiable. The history of Antifa is clear and easy to identify. It's hostile to the Republic and Black Lives Matter. While there may be people who want to support Black Lives Matter who believe there's a civil rights part of this, the leadership of Black Lives Matter openly serve on boards of organizations directly working with Freedom Road Socialist Organization, Communist Party USA, and things like that. So this is a hostile movement, and when the pieces all get laid out, I can tell you when we've briefed, whether it's members of Congress or state leaders or local leaders, I mean, their heads just explode because they're shocked at how far along these movements are. And so that's the key. And at the international level, we have our allied nations at the international diplomatic level talking about criminalizing free speech and going as far as saying, even if what you're saying is true, if we determine that it's Islamophobic and we're not going to define that term legally, it's just whatever we decide in the moment, then we want to be able to put people in jail for that. This is tyranny. This is absolute tyranny. And that's where we are. And so to go to something Sonia said, one of the things we stress is this is only going to get solved at the local level. And the two most important people are pastors and sheriffs, because sheriffs are the most powerful law enforcement officers. And if pastors were doing their jobs, which includes affecting the community.
It is. I'm so sorry. John, we're going to end up with, running out of time. I'm so sorry. Like 10 seconds left. John is heads up, Understanding the Threat. You can find it online. John, we're going to have another hour sometime and go through more of this. But thank you for your insights on the FBI and on the affidavit process to get a FISA warrant. And I'll have you on again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bless you.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, the discussion earlier this month about the possible political future of Oprah Winfrey provides a commentary on America's religious landscape. Russ Duthot reminds us that we've heard about Oprah the entrepreneur, Oprah the celebrity, Oprah the champion of holistic medicine, etc., but the press usually ignores her place as a religious teacher to millions of Americans. He also says we need to understand that there are three broad approaches to religious questions: one traditional, one spiritual, and one secular. The traditional approach may take various forms. There are Protestants, Catholics, Muslims, and Orthodox Jews. They believe in specific revelation, have a holy book, and follow various creeds. The secular tradition is also easy to document. It is rooted in the Enlightenment, in rationalism, and the scientific method. In previous commentaries, I've written about the new atheists as well as the rise of the nones, Americans who have no religious preference. In between these two traditions is the spiritual. No doubt you've heard friends or colleagues say, "I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual." This view encourages syncretism, merging various religious ideas, or relativism with no belief in absolutes. So when Oprah Winfrey tells us to pursue your truth rather than the truth, she is talking to this broad tradition. It's also worth noting that Americans in this spiritual tradition aren't very political, but they might be more involved if someone like Oprah Winfrey runs for office. And it is likely that some of the other traditions might be willing to cast a vote for her. Traditionalists might be attracted to someone who still uses religious language. Secularists might be attracted to someone who isn't quite so dogmatic about religion and morality. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For more information about issues covered on Viewpoints, visit pointofview.net. Pointofview.net.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Debbie Georgatos, filling in for Kirby Anderson. And I want to thank our friend John Guandolo. It was so helpful to have him lay out the basic points about what it takes to get a FISA warrant, which is it makes it obviously a issue of great concern whether the GPS, Fusion GPS, fairy tale Trump dossier was actually the basis for the issuance of the FISA warrant. That's one question. And the seriousness with which responsible FBI agents approach creating an application to get a FISA warrant contrasts with what appears to have happened here. And also his larger question about the crime of, certainly fraud or perjury if you're filing an application for a FISA warrant under false pretenses, but the larger question of whether you are conspiring within the Justice or FBI, Justice Department or FBI, to undermine a duly elected president, to bring him down through the uses of the power of the FBI and the Department of Justice to when you're motivated by political destruction of your opponent or of your political opponent versus uncovering the truth. So to help us sort some of those things out, we have joining us now a woman and also a friend named Sydney Powell, and she'll be on in just 2 seconds here. I want to give you a brief introduction to her. She served 10 years in the Department of Justice in both Texas and Virginia. She's also then, after that, has 20 years experience and with federal appeals. She's routinely recognized as one of the top attorneys in the country. In 2014, she published the book Licensed to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. And she's a prolific speaker and author and just advocate for the justice system of America and following the law in the justice system. And in this most recent episode, we're talking about now in America what's happening with the Mueller-Russia-Trump collusion investigation, and then the larger picture, what was happening inside the FBI. She's just a fabulous source. She was also, by the way, the youngest person ever appointed as a former assistant, as an assistant U.S. attorney. So she was smart even when she was really, really young. Okay, so we have, I believe we have Sydney Powell online. Sydney?
Hey, Debbie.
Hey there. Okay. You know what? We've been talking, you heard, I guess, with John Guandolo about the kind of what a FISA warrant requires. But I want to start with you because the reason I do this, this show isn't political, but we're often talking about, preserving America, which is founded on Judeo-Christian values. It is this is the most, a country where the rule of law matters and following the law and the structure of our government is our strength. And so I think it's important for listeners, no matter who you liked in the election, to understand that the corruption we appear to be seeing within the FBI and the Department of Justice really makes America, it undermines the core trust citizens have in the country and their government. It undermines the rule of law itself, if all that we are hearing is true. So I want to start with first, Sydney, your book was fabulous. I've interviewed you about your book before, License to Lie. But one thing you mentioned there, a person was in there I want to have you start with is there's a gentleman named Andrew Weissman who is on the Mueller special counsel team investigating the alleged Trump-Russia collusion. And you have some background on him I was hoping you would share with our listeners.
Yes, he's actually what I would call the lead villain in my book, Licensed to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. Mr. Weissman was on the Enron task force that ran roughshod over most of Houston. He destroyed Arthur Anderson with an indictment that did not even state a criminal offense in it. Anderson's conduct was not unlawful under the statutes they pieced together to try to make a crime out of something that wasn't. So he destroyed Anderson and 85,000 jobs all for nothing because the Supreme Court reversed it 3 years later in a unanimous decision that held Anderson's conduct was not criminal, and Mr. Weissman had persuaded the district judge to take all criminal intent out of the jury instructions. It was just an absolute horrific prosecutorial overreach. Even guilty plea had to be withdrawn because of it. It was so bad.
Which is unusual, very unusual.
Yeah, very unusual. He and Leslie Caldwell, who was then head of the Enron task force, had effectively bludgeoned Anderson partner David Duncan into pleading guilty to something that wasn't a crime.
And this gentleman now is on Mueller's team.
Yes, I wouldn't call him a gentleman, but yes, he is on Mueller's hit squad.
Well, that's part of what I want to get at isn't the very selection of a person like Andrew Weissman, doesn't it signal something about what Robert Mueller is maybe all about in this prosecution, in this investigation?
And it's even worse because Mueller brought Weissman into the FBI and has protected him throughout his career. I think they knew each other from the time Weissman was a prosecutor in I think it was the Eastern District of New York in Brooklyn. And then Mueller brought him in as his special counsel in the FBI and then made him deputy director and general counsel. They just have a long-standing relationship. And that's true of course, Mueller and Comey, which should have conflicted Mueller out of being special counsel. There's just nothing right about this. And then Weissman, after the Anderson debacle, turned his sights on Merrill Lynch and sent 4 Merrill Lynch executives to prison for as long as a year on an indictment, again, that was pieced together from different statutes and didn't allege conduct that was criminal. It took the Fifth Circuit a long time to sort that out, but all the defendants were released from prison. One was completely acquitted. And on top of that, the prosecutors had yellow highlighted but hidden the evidence that showed the defendants were innocent. And they hid that for 6 years, while one of them was always high up in Department of Justice or the FBI.
You know, Sydney, I think I said this when I interviewed you last time about your book, License to Lie, that if it had been a fiction book, it would have been a page-turner. I mean, if it wasn't even true, and to the fact that you were reporting what actually occurred is simply astonishing. But right now where we are with Mueller and the whole team at the FBI doing this special investigation special counsel investigation of President Trump, there's been characterizations in the media, and I always want to ask you, because I know you're following following it closely. You've commented on it. Characterizations that it appears that beginning at least July of 2016, the upper echelon of the FBI and the Department of Justice began a stealth operation with the complicity, if not instigation, of President Obama to taint and destroy candidate Trump with a concocted Russia collusion narrative. Is that accurate, fair? Or?
Yep, that is absolutely accurate and completely fair. I've got an article going back 2 years ago called The Countless Crimes of Hillary Clinton that went viral on the Observer.com website, and also one from over a year ago calling for the impeachment of Comey and Lynch as soon as they whitewashed Clinton's crimes. All of it had to be done because President Obama, and we know now from the text messages, some of the texts that have been recovered from Stroke and Page too, that they were protecting Obama because he and Hillary Clinton were communicating on her server at clintonemail.com as opposed to state.gov. He knew jolly well that she was using an insecure home server for her email conduct, and that's a violation of 18 United States Code Section 793, the Espionage Act. So they were both in it up to their eyeballs. Everything she transmitted to and from him, he's guilty of the same offense as she was.
Well, that's one thing I was going to get to, and that was one, I know there are many good articles about it. I think one of the articles is up on the pointofview.net website that I sent the link. I think that's up there, but it was written by Andrew McCarthy. Others made the point that from the very beginning, this involvement of Hillary Clinton running for president and it coming to light that when she served as Secretary of State, she used this homemade server, which had no protection, didn't have the protection that is afforded to the servers that are supposed to be used by members of the State Department and other people in sensitive positions. So this is the whole prosecution where Comey, or the whole investigation where FBI Director Comey came out and said, well, yeah, she was maybe careless, but he didn't want to call her grossly negligent because she used a server to send and receive email as Secretary of State that, and it came to light that, including, of course, because she's Secretary of State, some things in there are going to be classified at the highest possible security level, like top secret or wherever the top level is, and that she used that as a server which was completely vulnerable to hacking, to spying, and that President Obama had to have known she was doing that because he can see the email address he's sending it to, as you were alluding to. So
yeah,
that was
beyond a doubt now. I mean, I wrote this 2 years ago in my Countless Crimes of Hillary Clinton article. He was emailing her under an alias at that address. He knew damn well exactly what he was doing and that she was doing that. I think it was part of an unholy alliance they struck back when she switched her votes to him and her supporters to him when he was running for president the first time. And he agreed to let her do whatever she wanted as Secretary of State, and so she effectively privatized the State Department and sold it off for the benefit of her and Bill and, their pocketbooks.
You know what? We're coming up on a break. We're speaking with Sydney Powell, who is going to stay with us through the break. And we come back, continue talking, kind of turning back to focusing now. What is it that people are saying was so wrong that's happening inside the FBI and Department of Justice? This is the most interesting thing happening in the whole country, folks. Stay with us.
Why does Kirby Anderson do what he does? Because he believes in God's ability to use you to make a difference.
There's a real need for us to articulate a responsible biblical perspective and to give people an understanding of what is happening in the world, and in addition to educating them, to then empower them to go out and make a difference for Christ.
Together we can push back the growing darkness. It's not going to be easy. But by God's grace, it is happening one person, one community at a time. Join us in this mission. Become a monthly partner. $1 a day, $30 a month will make a huge difference. Or perhaps you can do $100 a month. We need partners of all sizes. We need you. Give today online at pointofview.net. At the top of the page, next to the Donate Now button, click on Become a Monthly Partner. Pointofview.net. Mail your donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, or call 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, your guest host for Point of View.
And welcome back. I'm Debbie Georgatos, and I'm so glad you're tuned in today. We still, fortunately for us, have a guest on the line, Sydney Powell, really renowned federal prosecutor, author, expert on, 10 years in the federal prosecution business, 30 or 20 years in federal appeals. But here's what I want to get to, Sydney, and help our listeners with that you, I think, will be very, very good at. So we have a prosecution based on a dubious dossier, and we had a FISA warrant issue. We had surveillance going on. Where ultimately now we have a special counsel, Mueller, appointed, who's investigating this alleged Trump-Russia collusion. So we can say, okay, it is true that special counsel Mueller seems to have stacked the deck. He's pretty much named his attorneys helping him are pretty much all Democrat, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama supporters, and they are looking into this collusion that doesn't seem to have existed. But what is it about this investigation that crosses the line from just vigorous investigation into I mentioned the expression to you, complicity, if not instigation, a stealth operation apparently. But what about it that makes you say what's happening within the FBI is beyond just vigorous investigation, that there's wrongdoing occurring here in this investigation?
Well, the text messages between Agent Peter Strzok, who was the lead investigator on Mueller's squad for months, and his mistress, Lisa Page, who was a DOJ attorney assigned to the FBI and assistant to McCabe, who for a while was acting director of the FBI, and then second in command under Comey, and again now under Director Wray, reveal very clearly that there was a plan in place hatched in McCabe's office, first to try to stop President Trump from being elected, and secondly to create some sort of insurance policy, as they called it, in the event that he was elected. And that included, no doubt, the surveillance, the improper surveillance and abuses of the FISA procedure. And this is not just me speculating. I have read the text messages, and there is also a FISA court decision that I linked in one of my articles on the Daily Caller. I think it's in the article called Release the Memo, Stop Robert Mueller's Mission Creep. And I've also called them Creeps on a Mission, which I think is more appropriate.
And so funny. Go ahead.
Yep. And I linked the FISA court decision in either that or the article called Mueller's Hit Squad Persecutes Trump while they cover for Clinton. But, yeah, the FISA court itself found gross abuses of the procedure by the FBI going back a year or more. They found serious Fourth Amendment problems. That FISA court decision was sealed for a while. It was unsealed a few months ago, which is a very rare thing to happen, that it's unsealed. But the FBI was giving private contractors unfettered and unlimited access to raw FISA information and allowing them to run what are called about queries to find out different things about different Americans. I am pretty sure that when we get the memo from Congressman Nunes and his committee that everybody's talking about with the hashtag Release the Memo, we will find out the names of the people that were involved in all of this. But just going by the language in the court's decision, it has to be the upper echelon of the FBI. The court even notes that there was a memorandum of understanding between the FBI and someone else. So I think we're going to see Fusion GPS named there, and I think we're going to see another Clinton-connected organization called CrowdStrike.
Yep.
But it's beyond the pale now and clear that there was, in fact, a criminal conspiracy between Fusion GPS and the upper echelon of the FBI and the upper echelon of DOJ, including the people in the National Security Division, which includes Bruce Orr, whose wife, Nellie, just by chance, worked for Fusion GPS. They hired her after all this started. I think she had a substantial hand in crafting what became known as the Steele dossier. I don't think Christopher Steele wrote as much of it probably as she did, but they cycled it back through Christopher Steele to take it to the FISA court. in pieces. You know, they were denied a FISA warrant the first time they tried. The court said no, but they got it the second time when actually they'd been running all these queries and everything throughout the whole process to even get the information that they then put into the Steele dossier to get it.
Okay, that was a fabulous summary, and I want to ask two things. One is it accurate that the two overarching, and please understand, I'm sure you do, that I am just appalled by what we are learning daily about the FBI and the Department of Justice and all these things. I won't try to, as a big picture way to say it for our listeners, the first overarching abuse was simply abusing the use of the FISA court to essentially get a warrant that allowed one political party to spy on a political opponent. Was that the big picture was all that went into getting a warrant like that. The second one is the even larger picture, which John Guandolo was alluding to at the end of our interview with him, which is it appears that within the FBI, based on the text messages between the two people you mentioned, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, and other information that's come from the FBI, it appears there was an ongoing, openly acknowledged, I mean secret, but I mean acknowledged among these parties that they were trying to do everything they could to prevent Hillary Clinton from being elected. Get Hillary Clinton elected, prevent Donald Trump, and once Donald Trump was elected, to find a way to bring him down. It's really an effort to bring down the president of the United States being controlled and orchestrated within the FBI. Is that too strong a statement?
No, and the Department of Justice.
Yes, and Department of Justice.
There are other parts to it, too. First, the FBI abused the FISA information without even getting a warrant. That predated their efforts to get a warrant. So they were already abusing it and then went to get a warrant to try to cover their tracks.
And this is that, and when you're there, you're referring to the querying process? Querying? Yes. Okay, for our listeners, like QUERYING, querying, so you can send requests for information. But isn't querying supposed to be available to a very small group of people?
Yes, it's a very restricted process, but the FBI gave that process over to the two independent contractors. They were able to do all of that and have access to the raw data. In addition to Obama expanded access to his daily briefing of the highest intelligence information to more people than anybody else ever has. And then Loretta Lynch, her last day in office, signed an unprecedented order also sharing the highest level of intelligence among more agencies and people than had ever been allowed.
So all of this is, and not only violations of many specific federal laws, but really is I can't think of an accurate word except it's just a complete abandonment of the integrity of following the law. It's a for the American people, it is a signal that you cannot have trust in the federal, the Federal Department of Justice, the FBI, the organizations we count on to maintain the rule of law in America. So, I mean, that's how I see it. And I've heard people say this is really, if it all is true, what appears to be true, that this is a far bigger scandal than Watergate could ever have been. Is that true?
Oh yes. Way bigger than Watergate could have been, because this is a coordinated effort between the two supposedly premier law enforcement organizations in the country, in absolute defiance of the law for their own political purposes. And it includes whitewashing the crimes of Hillary Clinton and others, her aides, President Obama, any number of people. And we're probably going to find, when we get to all of it, that there's more that they whitewash too. I mean, to put forth that extraordinary an effort in complete derogation of the law to try and cover all this up, there's got to be something really big under there, too. I don't know whether it's Uranium One or the money that was sent to Iran or, God only knows what, but it's going to be bad.
Sydney, you did a great job in summarizing, and I will tell you, I think a lot of people, in fact, I saw polling that said a majority of Americans are kind of sick of this Russia investigation, are sick of hearing about Russia-Trump collusion. They feel the investigation is impeding getting the business of the American people done. But this could not, if we surrender this, if we say, well, people are sick of it and we're getting so much stalling from the FBI that it's very hard to investigate, we can't seem to get to the root of what occurred, but the failure to get to the root of what occurred, the failure to really ferret out all that's happened here, and we have 30 seconds left here, but I think that would be a horrible way for America to treat the situation. We've got to be determined to get to the bottom of it.
Yes, all of this has to see sunlight so we know exactly what we're dealing with and can clean it up. I would encourage everybody to follow me on Twitter at Sydney Powell, the number 1, because I'm all over this as much as I possibly can be, consistent with practicing law all the time. And I've got a number of articles on the Daily Caller and the Observer. My pinned tweet has the 2 most important articles that came out 2 and 1 years ago that are still prescient and relevant.
Thank you. I was going to ask you next your Twitter handle, which is up on the screen here. So, Sydney Powell, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Okay, folks, when we come back, I'm gonna wrap a bow on this a little bit more and then turn to one other great story about America. Talk to you soon.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. The Smithsonian Institution has appointed its first curator of religion in over 100 years. Peter Manseau, the new curator, explains that you can't tell the story of America without the role of religion in it. According to Manseau, among the first exhibits to be displayed will be a church bell crafted by Paul Revere, Thomas Jefferson's Bible that cut out the portions he did not believe, a manuscript from the Book of Mormon, a Muslim text that once belonged to an African slave, and even a Torah scroll damaged by Hessians during the War for Independence. Manseau also intends to display a compass used by Roger Williams to find his way to Rhode Island when he was exiled from Massachusetts for his religious beliefs, a display that Manseau hopes will help Americans ponder what religious liberty looked like in the context of the founding of our country. The new curator is right. You cannot tell the story of America without telling the role religion has played in making our country what it is today. And that includes the role of religious liberty. These artifacts from our history point to the real stories of Americans committed to the historically radical idea that government respect a person's right to honor his conscience before God. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
More people today are saying Americans don't really need religion, but America does need religion. Religion helps the economy, families, and even national security. Learn more by reading Saving America, 10 Reasons Religious Freedom is the Key to Our Nation's Future. You can download this free booklet at firstliberty.org/Saving America. That's firstliberty.org/Saving America. Discover 10 ways religion benefits America at firstliberty.org/Saving America.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back. I so appreciate you tuning in. Again, Debbie Georgatos filling in for the traveling Kirby Anderson. And we just have one segment left. This show goes by so fast every week. 2 hours just race by. We have no more guests calling in. We can take callers. Again, it's 800-351-1212. There's a caller, I think, who may have been holding since the beginning. I'm not even sure she's really there. But Esther had called in about the story of President Trump taking the message of the of America First to the Davos conference, which may not have been popular with other world leaders. And if she's still there, I'd love to get her chance to talk to us. So, Esther, I don't know if you're still there.
Hi, thank you for all the information today, ma'am.
You're so welcome.
Okay, I do believe that America should be first. Just like a parent, I was taught, my mother said, you have to take care of yourself first so that you can take care of other people. And just like somebody maybe on an airplane, if it's a parent with children, the parent has to put the air mask on themselves first if there's danger and then be able to take care of the children. We are strong, and we can love our brothers and sisters all over the world, but we have to love ourselves first.
I love that. And actually, Esther, what you're saying ties in very well with the comparison I was making with respect to how America represented itself to the world under the previous 8 years under President Obama, where there seemed to be such a signaling about the America that we didn't honor and think ourselves to be a noble country. And we spent a lot of time focusing on the things that weren't good and aren't perfect about America. And no one is saying the country is perfect, but the idea that we honor America as a as a country, just the world needs us to be the beacon of liberty, of the protection of First Amendment rights. We are a country just dedicated to preserving the freedom, the liberty of the individual, including their right to exercise all their First Amendment and other rights. That's our country, and that's a thing to be proud of. And I'm really grateful that President Trump speaks so positively about America and takes that message. It doesn't mean, as some of his critics try to say, that he's saying that other countries aren't good or that we think we're better than you. It just means we are America, and we stand for and believe ourselves to be a noble people, a noble country, and we are going to preserve and protect our people, not hurt others, but protect our own people. So thank you, Esther. I love that point. The other thing I was going to try to do in this segment was kind of put a bow around these two last guests we had, because I know it was a lot of information, and both of those people, if it isn't clear, are heavily immersed in this topic, heavily immersed in what happened at the FBI, what's happening at the Department of Justice. And I see there's a caller, actually, Joan from South Carolina, who's talking about the idea of getting all the details right about the FBI misconduct. And if you're still there, Joan, I'd love to talk to you. Sorry. Whoops. Okay.
Today.
Hi.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thanks for calling.
Okay. I wanted to say that I believe strongly in our FBI. And just like our America is like an idea, it's like a city on a hill that everybody wants to come to because of our laws and our policies and the fact that we are a democratic society. Our FBI should be believed and trusted. And I think that if we would not chip away at it, we can still be strong with our FBI, the leaders from the top to the bottom. But I think that people who are gnawing away at it based on little stories here and there, like the secret society, is not completely factual, because the TV is saying something else like it was a joke or something that wasn't paramount. So I don't want the American public to start doubting our FBI. I truly believe in it, whether I'm a Republican or Democrat or an independent. That's important, that we trust our people there. They work really hard, and they believe in what they do. Some of them are career professionals, but they all work hard. So get all the facts before you start, chipping away at it. Let it be strong. And let us come together for the purpose of our country. Not about any party, but it's about our country looking strong and standing strong.
Joan, thank you so much for that point. I will say on that subject that I think all of us who love America, we do not like to think that we could possibly have corruption of the level being described, not just by these two guests, but throughout by all sorts of experts throughout this country. And I agree with the notion that there are many good people in every institution. There are many good people in the FBI, but it's also true that it has happened in organizations and government administrations and bureaucracies. There can be a tainting, a turning away, a corruption of the culture of that institution. And we American people, we deserve an FBI that is worthy of the institution it's supposed to be, that's worthy of the honor and respect we give the FBI, is worthy of the power they hold over the American people. And I think we can't be blind and just assume because they work for the FBI, they certainly are truthful. What's coming to light, just to be very clear and try to wrap up this story, what's coming to light about these agencies is that at least beginning at the time that President Obama and Hillary Clinton, and this is not conjecture or speculation, they communicated back and forth over an unsecured email server set up by Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State that exposed our nation's secrets, our resources, our spies that are around the world and doing covert operations, our secrets of all kinds, exposed them to danger of being hacked. In fact, it was hacked. Because they chose to act unlawfully. That is not speculation. That's a fact. Once that occurred, and the recognition was that if Hillary Clinton was guilty of violating that federal law that said you can't use a server like that, then so was President Obama, because he was communicating with her over that server repeatedly during her 4 years as Secretary of State. That's not even speculation. So we have that. And then we have what is now coming to light, that it appears that the FBI cooperated with a Hillary Clinton campaign paid organization to allow them access to secret data they had otherwise no right to have access to, but the FBI permitted that access of Fusion GPS to information that they had no right to have. That was used in part to create this fake dossier used by the federal government to authorize spying on a political enemy of the sitting party. This is third world banana republic stuff, if this is true. This is not a close question. This is not a minor, forgot to check the right form, forgot to sign the form with the correct full name. These are not minor things. This is about whether or not we have a country based on the rule of law, and the rule of law actually must extend to every single person, especially those in the FBI and the Department of Justice. And these are very serious crimes if they occurred, as it appears, and the evidence is pouring forth, spewing forth. And in fact, the Democrats in the Congress are trying to say that the American people don't deserve to know the truth. This memo written by in Congress summarizing what the wrong actions were by the FBI and Department of Justice that has given rise to this release the memo hashtag. This is a memo summarizing what many in Congress they've all read it, and they've said that, this is the most egregious, stunning, beyond description corruption of the FBI. It is not protecting America or noble or anything good or right for Americans to say that we just can't face that truth. We have to deal with truth. We have to uncover the truth so we can restore the FBI, Department of Justice, and our government back to the rule of law that our founders blessed us with in our founding documents. Okay, well, I had lots of other stories, but as usual on the show, it takes more time to talk than I hope. So we had a kind of a serious day today, but I think it's the kind of thing you look back and, 10, 20, 30 years from now, this will be something that will be monumental in American history. And it's good to have the facts straight and our eyes open. And so I urge you to go to the website, pointofview.net. You can find links to the articles we talked about. Look up John Guandolo, Sydney Powell, and come back every single day to Point of View. And I'll be with you again tomorrow on the Roundtable. So talk to you tomorrow. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the Republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? America needs Christians to be informed and as unified as possible, applying God's wisdom to civic life. Point of View can be a key part of a successful mission. I believe in America. I believe God wants His best for